So, Mick, your chosen subject for today is 1978.
My special subject.
Do you remember the tour poster just behind you here from 78?
I do. I think that was Charlie and me. It was very fashionable at the time, the Chinese propaganda posters.
I've got to ask you whether you remember the T-shirt that you were wearing on this particular show in Fort Worth, the Destroy T-shirt.
It was, that must have been the sort of punk thing. I think I must have bought that in one of these sort of shops. I went to these shops, like really cheap shops, and so instead of like having like sort of designers do your thing, I went to these cheap shops and bought a load of trashy stuff. And then I did have designers do some things, but so I mixed it up between these cheap things and some really nasty, horrible all these things are a joke in retrospect, but there were some nasty plastic leatherette hats sort of thing, I think, and some nasty kind of cheap coloured jackets, and mixed up with some kind of good things. So I think that though this looks very simple here and very kind of laid back, I think the outdoor sort of ones were a bit more flamboyant, yeah, because I think some of the outdoor ones in those days, they used to take place in the day, and so you had to wear these super bright colours, otherwise you really disappeared.
This, of course, was the era when punk was supposedly coming in to boot guys like you out, and do you remember thinking, that was a big deal at the time?
Inevitably live in the time you're in, and you couldn't have possibly have avoided the whole thing of the feeling of those years. I mean, the years before. So I think it's more in the playing than the writing. Or maybe, I don't know. I mean, I think a bit of both, but having said that, of course, you can say that, and then you turn around and say, yeah, but you did this country song. You did this straight country song, and then this dance tune, which is Miss You, which has nothing to do with punk, couldn't be more different. But see, all these things were going on at the same time, which has made this particular era musically very interesting. So you've got what you've got going on is the sort of punk thing, which is rather short-lived. It's almost coming to an end, I think, by the end of, say, 1978. And you've got the beginnings of rap, which is going on in New York specifically. And then you have kind of new wave, you want to call it, if you want, whatever. And then so in New York, you've got this real mixture of things going on in a very small area. So I was sort of there quite a lot. So then you've got CBGBs, and you've got some rap going on in ballrooms in Brooklyn. You got dance music sort of starting to sort of go into the total mainstream from a sort of, and there are lots of gay dance music, and there's lots of Latin dance music, and then there's a kind of synthesis of it going on, particularly in New York. In other places, there's a complete separation of it, where people are going, I hate that, and I love this, and this is my music, and I hate that. Whereas I think in New York, you had a more kind of tolerant idea of it. So you have one group being very influenced by another.
Can you remember how Miss You came about as a song?
I was writing that tune with Billy Preston was playing the drums, and I was just on my own, and in this rehearsal room, I think, and Billy Preston was playing the drums. I don't know what he was doing there, and he was playing this four on the floor, dance beat thing, and I hadn't really thought of it like that when I was writing. I don't think I'd really thought of it like that, but Billy was playing this four on the floor thing, and then so when Charlie walked in, he heard Billy playing that. I think that's how I remember it. Maybe Charlie remembered different. But Charlie and I just carried on playing the four on the floor, which was, not a new beat by any means. And everyone said, oh, it was disco. But I mean, it wasn't really. I mean, the only thing disco about it was the four on the floor thing. And the rest of it was completely sort of Rolling Stones. But there was a sort of slight element of rap in there, the way I kind of delivered it. So obviously I've been listening a bit to that Sugar Hill Gang, because that wasn't like rap now, kind of. It was much more gentle. And then when Dr. Dre did a remix of it, of Miss You, and I forgot all about what I had actually done vocally. And then when I listened to the Dr. Dre remix, I realised I was kind of doing that kind of delivery that at the time was considered sort of talking. And also you had the element that was in Shattered also. So it's like a kind of punk beat with this guitar riff that Keith does, and then me, it's sort of what I do is a sort of semi-rap thing. It's half talking and everything. So I was obviously very influenced by that. But so I think that this record is a good synthesis of all those kind of things that were going on at the time.
Were you specifically influenced as a writer by disco? Because you used to go to a lot of clubs yourself, didn't you, around that time?
Rock people particularly, I thought that they hated disco and everything. Well, I don't really know why, but that it was a bit like, this is my music and I don't like it. It was a sort of, they didn't react to it well. I'm sorry, I didn't really understand. I never really understood that kind of thing. I mean, because there was very awful disco music, there's awful rock music, and awful every kind of music, and there's also very good, disco song, what were classed, they were fantastic, which have all stood the test of time, and we all know it now, they are. And all these things, the crap falls by the wayside, and what was really good lasts. But it was actually a really good era for dance music, looking back on it.
But it's interesting the way you built the set list for this Fort Worth show. There's some older stuff at the beginning of it, and then there's actually a block of, I think it's like 8 new songs in a row from all from Some Girls, which is kind of different to the way you would do a show. When you do that in a show, are the new ones the ones you look forward to the most?
You might be, depends how good you are playing them, or how settled you are. You might approach them with some trepidation, because that's the ones you tend to mess up. So you have to concentrate. I can see on the Shattered, the concentration on everybody's face to make the changes. I can see it. I don't know if the audience really sees it, but I can see the sort of, okay, you better make these changes right, because if you screw up, and if you screw the ending up, you've had it. Even if Charlie plays one beat too many, it's definitely wrong. So you'll have to be. I can see that the new songs, you want to get them right. But they were obviously very good to play on stage. A lot of up-tempo numbers, very, very fast and get on with it. Short and sweet as well. And there's stuff like Just My Imagination being a cover version. People knew it, so that helped as well.
The tour that the Fort Worth show was a part of was the first American tour for, I think, 3 years. You tended to tour in the States at sort of 3-year intervals, didn't you? And it was quite a mixture of shows, wasn't it? You did some indoor shows and some arenas and some stadiums as well.
And it was quite a short tour. I think that we counted out the dates just now, because you said you thought there were 40, and I said I don't think it was that many. And it turned out to be something like 20-some odd shows. And they were a mixture of gigs. So this one is an arena, and then there were theatres. There was a Fox Theatre in Atlanta, which we played since then, and then there was some stadium shows. There was like 3, 4 stadiums: Soldiers Field in Chicago, and Anaheim, the stadium at Anaheim, and then some regular arenas. Mostly arenas. So it's a formula. You can do this. I mean, the only thing is about doing it is that it's quite tricky to adjust from one formula to the other on a regular basis. And you have to be honest, you need different songs for different gigs. You can't always play these same songs. If you have a set list, and you've got to have a big fund of songs to change it up. I'm not sure if we did it on this tour, but on later tours I've noticed you go into a theatre, you don't want to do the same ones. If you do, it tends to not work quite so well. So it's hard to do you go from the Fox Theatre Atlanta to a 90,000 seat stadium. It's very different, and your attitude to the audience is different. You go into the Fox Theatre doing what you do in the Anaheim, it looks absolutely stupid. And you have to really pull back, and so you can see, the audience can see your eyes, and you can see their eyes. It's a completely different feeling. So it's quite hard doing a tour, but it keeps you interested, because otherwise, if you do arenas, it can become a bit repetitive.
One of the things that struck me about watching this show, the Fort Worth show, is that it's a very, I wouldn't say serious, but it's a very workmanlike performance by the band.
It's quite intense, though. I think the performance is quite concentrated. It's got very, but it's very kind of. Then on the other hand, you can see everyone concentrating, trying to get everything right, and there's no kind of slop. It's not sloppy. And it's kind of very, But everyone's having fun, but yet they're concentrating, and then some bits seem very throwaway, which is kind of good.
The other thing about this era, of course, is that it's just after Keith had his drugs bust. I mean, was there a feeling of uncertainty about the future of the band at that time for you?
That was very uncertain, yeah, very uncertain. And I got my kind of that was my in my misuse story with Billy Preston. I think Keith was in jail at that point, and I was writing this, and Billy was there, and we were supposed to be playing a gig in Toronto, and Keith was actually in jail, so I was just writing this song with Billy. And then, so it was very uncertain. And it was also difficult because the Americans are very difficult about visas and things. So if you have drug bust, then your position as a kind of working musician becomes very tricky.
I thought it's funny looking at the show that you notice the complete lack of any apparent security at all. It's just kind of you out the front of the stage and moving around as you were beginning to do, and it's just you and the crowd.
You'll find that some places will be very, very full of security depending on the building, and so this building was obviously very relaxed, and it could have been one of those very relaxed buildings. You go to another building and it would be like paranoia beyond, and if you'd have filmed that, but maybe for the filming we got rid of the security because it never looks good they get in the way, and the security can be they see a camera, also everyone's affected by cameras, including security people, and so they want to be in the shot. So I think probably Bill Graham, being a sort of clever, probably got rid of the security, which is why you don't see any. I think that's probably how it worked.
And also towards the end of that show, I noticed that I'm sure a very affectionate gesture, you chuck a couple of buckets of water over the crowd.
Oh, is that? Yeah. Well, they were very hot. And I used to put it on myself. Do I put it on myself?
I don't think so on this one.
I don't?
I don't think so.
I spare myself. Very kind. I was so kind, decided not to get covered in water. Well, as long as you don't throw it straight at one person, it's all right. It's a bit mean if you get it wrong and it goes all over one person.
It was a hot July night.
It was exactly. Yeah, it's fine.
And I must ask you about the cover art for the Some Girls album, which was very striking and quite controversial as well.
Yeah, so the cover is it's like a parody of a wig ad that they would have in a women's magazine, and but it had that thing. I think it was Peter Costin that did this, and so when you opened when it was a 12-inch thing, you opened it and the faces changed, and you had our faces going where the women's faces were. But on the original version of it, we had kind of old-fashioned pictures of Hollywood film stars. I think Doris Day was one of them, Jane Crawford and so on. And then we got into some copyright problems with that. But stupidly, nobody in those days was very good at lawyering, and then they didn't get the right permissions from the artists. Of course, some people wouldn't have minded at all. And then we got into problems and had to change the cover. And it was a big hassle. It was good fun. I mean, the cover was really a good cover, and we loved it. But unfortunately, we had to change it halfway through. But so it became slightly disappointing to Charlie and myself. But it still looked funny.
So when you think back on 1978 and this tour and this Fort Worth concert in particular, is it sort of with a lot of affection?
Yeah, I think the album really stands up. It's a great album, in my opinion, humbly, he said. This, as you said before, we played quite a lot of it on this show, and it's really new and fresh to you, and hadn't done it obviously more than a few times, and so you see it, just starting to take shape. So I think it's really interesting.